Alright everyone, hello again. It's been a couple weeks since we started. Um, and I apologize for not having a whole lot of updates. Um, Honestly, let me know guys if you want more updates. Part of the problem is that with this project I've been doing a lot of coding. I got far more code this time around than I had with the platform game in January, or even the other thing. It's, I don't know, a couple thousand lines of code. It's been enough that I don't it's just been a lot of coding and fixing bugs. And when I don't have um, when I've been sitting around trying to fix a bug, I don't really know that I have anything I want to show you guys. But maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you guys want to give me hints on what to do next. Um, but yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what I've got done. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and run this. I need to actually start up the server because I didn't for whatever reason. Alright. So you can tell I added some graphics. Oh, I'm going to actually have this more zoomed in. I set it to zoomed out as kind of a debug view. So you can wander around here. Right now you have a placeholder graphics. The graphics here are actually being generated and cached on the back end. So that it generates pretty fast. There's still some loading, but it's not too bad. I may or may not try to optimize it. So when you switch over, what's happening is that on the back end, it's actually generating a new chunk of data. Let's go over here, see? Which is in theory allowing you to wander around, you know, as long as you like. And going back clearly is not requiring as much because it doesn't need to generate the chunk data. So it's pretty seamless when you go back and forth. It's not doing it right now because I've turned it off to work on cave generation, which it's pretty good. I think it's how I want it for now. I mean, it looks relatively organic, right? It doesn't look too bad. The reason it was a little tricky is because what's actually happening is it's generating a graph with these chambers and nodes that branch off from it, and it's making sure that the things connect with each other, that you can't just wander into a dead end. You can, in theory, wander forever, I guess. I mean, realistically, it would stop at a certain point, but you get the idea. These are little debug markers so that I know which chunk I'm in. So yeah, it's generating 64 by 64 chunks, just like Minecraft. And as you wander around, it loads them in dynamically. See what's happening there? It's actually generating all the adjacent chunks before you get to them. And it'll look... I haven't decided how I want to do it. But see, when you go back and forth, it's simply unloading and loading the chunks as you walk through it. So that you're always actually only looking at the chunk you're in plus all the adjacent chunks. You're never looking at more than that. But you can wander around, do whatever you want. Collision is not perfect because now I need to separate the X and Y so you can slide along the walls, but you can't do that right now. But it's not a big deal. It's pretty good. And I'm kind of digging this bumpy look. And let's see if I can do it. I may be able to. I actually want it to be smaller than that. Okay. You'll notice I've split things off into a whole bunch of different. Yeah, this is going to change later. The tricky thing is when you're using you don't need to look at me shopping for clothes. Nope. When you're using wonder if I can. There we go. When you're using require.js, which I'm using to load the modules dynamically, one of the annoyances is how things refuse to load without caching. They will constantly cache even if you try to force the load. But you can see this is closer to what it's going to look like. All right. And there's your little person. I haven't decided how I want it, but you can see that these are actually being generated um, dynamically and then cached, and that's being used to generate the background. The same is going to be for this, so that way I can load it at any particular size I want. This I think feels pretty good. It's not bad. It's detailed enough that you feel like you're moving around. And this is the main mechanic. So somebody was like, I don't really get what the mechanic is going to be, and it's kind of done a little bit of a turnaround in my mind. I have an idea for what it's going to be like. Basically, I'm calling it a rogue light bright. So the idea is that you have a color, and everybody that starts the game has a color, right? And you'll be able to plant lights and have them be in a particular place. I need to send like partial chunk updates too, so that I can change just one thing. And I'll do that eventually. So you'll be able to plant your lights, right? And they'll start growing. And as there are multiple lights, see, let's say I plant a blue light and somebody plants a yellow light. As they mingle and mix, they'll become green lights in the middle. And you can pick up those green lights and plant them in other places. And then you can plant them to draw little pictures and stuff, right? And because the world is going to be persistent, and it is actually, I've turned it off. Like I guess I didn't finish saying it. It does save to the database. It's saving to a database in the cloud, and then it is compressing everything down and loads and unloads everything relatively dynamically. So that way, hopefully, I'll be able to have however many people want to play it at one time. Probably not more than a couple people at a time. But my goal here, it's an art game, okay? It's an experimental art game, and it's about the kind of idea that I want is I want it to be kind of a fun little thing where, I don't know, say I go around here and I draw a little happy face or something using the lights I've gathered. I kind of wanted to make a persistent online game that does not necessarily require people to be playing at the same time, so that it's asynchronous. So that, say I draw a little happy face here or a heart or something, then as you're walking along, you'll discover all these little graffitis that people have drawn. And I may actually generate some within the world by itself, but I don't know. And then maybe I'll have something like, if you walk by a place and you like it, you'll press a button and it'll like it, and then stuff will change as little areas get liked. So that if you draw a penis or something, people might dislike it and it'll shrivel away. Yeah. But if you draw something cool, people might like it and it'll grow and change the environment in some way. And by that I mean like the walls will start to turn into that particular color or something like that. Okay. So that if people like your heart that you draw, the walls might start turning red in the same color as the heart. So very simple kind of experimental thing that you can just wander around caves and all of a sudden you'll come across like a little artwork that people have drawn. This really depends on if anybody actually wants to play it, but I'm hoping that enough people will toy with it that it'll just be a fun little thing that people can have. Alright, let's check out the code a little bit. Why not? Like I said, I've been working on trying to make this integrated with Visual Studio, because the client side is using AMD with Require.js, and the server side is using Node.js. It's all fairly complex. I guess, what should I want to look at? On the server side, I'm using Mongoose. So I've defined the schema here for the chunk. One thing I need to do is I need to save chambers so that things can be connected. What is this? Oh, this is my saving code that I've disabled for now because I've been working on the chunk generation, and so I didn't want to actually save anything while I was doing that. Chunk generation is pretty I don't want to say it's simple. It's relatively simple. Basically, each chunk has one main chamber um, that is placed somewhere in the chunk, and then that chamber tries to attach to adjacent chambers in adjacent chunks. And then from each chamber, it splits off smaller chambers, which can then split off smaller chambers down to level 3. This is a timeout here to make sure it doesn't, that if there's nowhere for it to place the new chamber at all, that it's going to time out. And there you go. So we're always going to have at least one branch, and every branch will have at least one other branch. And then after that, there's a so a 90% chance of having a second branch and a 60% chance of a third branch. In reality, because of the space constraints, these almost never spawn off the full number of branches. We check to see if they overlap, and then we link each other. That's what's actually making a graph. And the reason I'm doing that, and somebody was like, "Oh, why don't you just use like a noise-based generation?" It's like, well, the problem with that is that it's unlikely that chambers will connect to each other. It's like if you go into Minecraft, you'll notice that often chambers, there's often dead ends and little areas that you can't get to, which is okay in Minecraft because you can dig, but I didn't want the players to be able to dig through the areas. What else is going on here? Oh, it updates the chunk. Yeah, there's a little timer on the client side that's continually checking to see if the chunks have been updated. And if they have, they're sending that. There's also, I'm probably also going to have the server push chunk updates if there's other things that are special. But for now, it's okay. It's requesting it about every 3 seconds. The one thing I don't have is that currently the player is entirely client-side and doesn't interact with the server at all, other than requesting when it goes into a new chunk to generate or load new chunks. Oh, so here's the map. So yeah, I mean, this is why I'm not showing you this stuff, because I currently have, 300 lines on this one and 200 lines on the other. Before I split this into multiple parts, the client and the player thing was up to like 500 lines, was it? No, more, because it's 500 lines just with the client. That's what the player code split off. Annoyingly, I haven't figured out an easy way to do this. I want to share some of this stuff from place to place. In fact, I probably need to get rid of this. I don't use this anymore. Yeah. When it loads, it goes through and it checks until the other chunks have been loaded. It goes fairly fast. Now, granted, I'm running this on a fairly fast machine, but when I ran it on my laptop, it still works okay. So I'm not too worried about the speed of it. Client side is perfectly fine. I'm not really doing a lot on client side. It's generation serving out serving up the caves that concerns me. What I'm probably going to do is leave the movement code almost entirely client side, and simply have the server side check it, which means that anybody could cheat, and I'll do basic stuff like checking to make sure players aren't moving too fast. And doing some basic checks, but basically I'm trusting the client side in this case, simply because I don't anticipate being able to. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to have to do this on Heroku, and the one thing about Heroku is it does not allow you to use WebSockets, or at least it used to not allow you to use WebSockets. And when you have to use what is it, long polling? I don't know what it's called. It's like XHR requests. It's Ajax, right? If you have to use Ajax for games, it's slow as hell. Like latency in like 200 milliseconds. So way too slow for real-time stuff to be smooth. So I have to offload it almost all to the client side. If I was using WebSockets, I'd be able to get much more reliable connections, and it would be, I'd do something different, but I think that's what I'm going to do for this. Honestly, who's going to speed hack, or wall hack their way through my experimental art game where you place lights? Nobody's going to do that, so it'll be fine. My goals over the next week is to make the player thing multiplayer, so that multiple players can be on at once. It shouldn't really take very much. I already have players. I already have the basics in place for that. It should be like a one-day project to get it started. I need to finish up, all the changes I made to generation. I need to put into the database. I need to put in the actual gameplay mechanics, but that's like my next couple weeks kind of thing. Other than that, it's going okay. Oh, and I need to make sure I can put this on a server somewhere before the end of the month. Yeah, today was basically the first day where I felt like it was working smoothly enough that I could show it to you guys. It's been a lot of back-end stuff, a lot of writing out the engine, and if you're really curious, go ahead and check GitHub. My stuff is on there. You're gonna have to write a configuration file that points to a database server, because that's why I was like, I'm sharing my database password to GitHub. It's on there, but I've changed it since then, so don't worry about it. Again, not like it really matters, but I definitely don't want just random people writing to the database. It's using Mongo, so you can always install Mongo locally and hack it a bit, but you probably won't need to do that. Yeah, it's moving along. Final notes. TypeScript I'm liking, but it feels beta. So I'll give you an example of something that came up right here. This. I was getting an error that was telling me. So let me go through this. This is the movement step. We add our velocity to our position, and then we come up with a new point. The new point then does a collision check, right? With the collision check checks against each of the corners of the bounding box. Since the player is the same size as the tile, I can cheat by doing that. I don't have to be more precise than that. And then, whoa, you can hear my chair squeaking. And if we collide, then if we don't collide, then we're going to do that. If we do collide, I don't actually need this, do I? Well, I am. So the problem was that I'll show you where it was in another place. So yeah, then it goes to a new step. Why am I doing it like this? I'm falling asleep. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh yeah, okay. So what we're doing is that if we collide, we're stepping backwards until it uncollides, and then it sets that as the being the thing. That lets you get flush against the wall, right? Because if you get into the wall, look at my little pointer bit. If you get into a wall, it'll pull it back out until it stops colliding. All right. Now, so it was right here. So this gets back this rollover thing right here. This rolls from one chunk to another and converts your point from one chunk to the other chunk. And for whatever reason, it was not finding the type on that chunk. See where it says client.chunk? Couldn't find it. It worked fine in here, but when I tried to compile it, didn't work. Actually, the weird thing is it worked, but it gave me errors while it was still working. I don't understand at all what was going on. Long story short is that if I'm trying to let's go to the game. Where's the game? The client. Let's go to rollover. No. So you can type. You can when you're making say that your function returns a. Actually, no. Yeah. Let's show here. Right. This function is returning an object that has these three properties of these three types. Right. The way that typing works in TypeScript is that things are of a particular type if they meet the requirements for that type. Right. So in this case, this object here, I don't need to define this as a particular class or an interface or anything like that. I could make an interface like that if I wanted to. Um, However, I don't need to. Um, Instead, if this object meets the requirements for this, they're of the same type. And in fact, this object here is a point, because my point interface simply is anything that has an x and a y coordinate, right? And so I really like how typing works like that. But for whatever reason, it was not able to find the types within this, and I could not get it to work. Um, so yeah, the reason I deleted it here was because I was having trouble today because when my when my character rolled over, it wasn't working correctly, and what was happening is that I actually check over here, not on the player but on the client, to see if you've left the chunk. And once you've left the chunk, it starts requesting the server to give me the next couple things and rolls it over once the new ones have loaded. Um, but I had been doing that here too, and that was screwing things up. So right now it's working okay. I'm probably going to need to get some player graphics. I haven't decided what I want the players to look like. But there you go. So those like weird things that are happening, and I think what's happening is that the client here is a variable, and the variable was not able to be found within like an object literal. Um, I don't know. It just was weird stuff. Right. See here I can find the chunk, but there it wasn't. Um, Go figure. So thanks for watching. I'll try to update next week because I really would like to have the last week or so open for beta testing, so that even a couple people on, like, say, on YouTube or Twitter can play around with it and let me know how it is. All right. Well, thanks. See you later.